Hey guys, welcome back to another Foundr interview series. And today we're in Melbourne, Australia at our HQ, Foundr HQ. And we're joined by Gideon Shelwick, my good friend. He's come from Brisbane to do this interview. And he's the founder of a company called Splashio and also the former co-founder of a company called V-Roll. And I think you've done a lot of stuff. So we're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and all the lessons, get him to share his experiences. So Gideon, thanks so much for taking the time, man.
Great to be here, Nathan.
Awesome. So the first question that I ask everyone that comes on is, how did you get your job?
Well, I got sick of working for someone else. Basically, that's how it happened. I was qualified as an electronic engineer. I hated that, and then I thought, let's do another degree. So I did a master degree in engineering management, which was more to do with the people side of business, and I really enjoyed that. So I went into, the management side of engineering, which is cool, but it was still working for somebody else, it's fine. It wasn't a big problem per se, but I got really frustrated because I felt like I couldn't really live out my potential. I felt really stuck, and I don't think there was any job in the world that would allow me to really live out my potential the way that I wanted to. So I felt really stuck. And there are a few other things as well. I started reading books like old classic like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he talked about how when you're working in a job, for example, you're not really building up an asset and this sort of thing. So I started thinking, well, I've got to do something to build up my own asset. The day I stop working would be the day I stop getting paid, right, in a job. So I got cold feet. Me and my wife were both back in New Zealand. And one day I just said, I've had enough working. This is like 5 years working. And I said, I've had enough. This is not what I thought it would be. Let's quit our jobs. My wife had a job as well back then. And said, let's quit our jobs and let's start fresh. Let's emigrate to Australia at the same time and start a whole new life, a whole new business. And at first I said, look, I'll go and apply for jobs just to get us a ticket into Australia. And then once we get a job, we'll go. 3 months later, we're still stuck in New Zealand. Nobody wanted to have me as an employee, which is just as well, right? Anyway, so I asked my wife, Tineke, I said, look, why don't you apply for something? Let's see. So we're both applying for jobs. Within a week, she had 3 job offers. And then she flew over that Friday and to all 3 and got, she could decide between any of the 3 jobs. She decided on one of them. A month later, we landed in Australia. I was jobless and she had a job. She was paying the bills. And I was there in the apartment thinking about, what do I do now? I don't want to work for someone, but I know I want to start a business, but I had no idea what I was doing. And no idea even what I wanted to do. So I've been so conditioned with the education system to think and act in a certain way that by that time I've forgotten who I was myself and I've forgotten what my key strengths and talents were. So at first I just started I looked at everything. Thinking back now, I looked at franchise businesses. We went to this franchise expo, or I went to this franchise expo, and I remember there were these dog washing franchises. And I was looking at it going, I could do that. I mean, how hard could it be to wash dogs for a living and make, these guys have a franchise out of it. So luckily I didn't do that. Probably nothing wrong with that. You can probably do quite well, but it wasn't for me. Anyway, the franchise thing wasn't for me. I ended up going to a course. They taught us how to write a book. I wrote the book and sold it as my very first product online. It was an ebook, so this is back in 2006, 2007. So I sold it for like $47 and that was my ticket. That's how I got my job, I suppose.
Wow, what was the book on?
So the book was a personal development kind of book.
Yep.
I blush when I think about the title, but I have an excuse. On the course, they taught us that titles with the word secrets and millionaire in it do really well. So what sort of title could I come up with? So I came up with the title, Millionaire Dropout Secrets. So I was just starting out writing this book, but I didn't write it as me being successful. I wrote it more as me being the reporter and looking at everyone else that's dropped out of the system and how they've become successful.
Yep.
And I remember using a text from Larry Ellison as my foreword. It's debatable whether he actually wrote it, but it was all about basically dropping out of the system. And that's really what it was like for me. Like I really felt at that point that book represented me dropping out of the system, where it was just in my head that I was stuck in, to be able to do what I really wanted to do.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So what happened next, man?
Well, from there, it's interesting. I sold enough books when I launched it to think, hey, this is amazing. I could be doing this from, I was working just from our lounge area with this little 1-bedroom apartment in Brisbane, and that's where I created everything. Right there, I thought, oh wow, this is great. I could be working from home, selling these digital products, and live happily ever after. But what happened was, my very first success was the person who taught me how to write the book and promote it. He had a list of 10,000 people on his database. So he promoted for me. He was my first joint venture. Yes. So he promoted this book for me. We made a ton of sales. I remember waking up one Saturday morning, because he sent the email the night before, because he was in Europe, and he sent it while I went to sleep. I wake up in the morning, and it's like email after email, sale. And I was like so excited, thinking, wow, this is too easy. And then I ran out of traffic. I had no idea about business building. I knew how to write a book, and I was lucky to get my mentor to promote for me. But then I had no idea about having a proper business. I mean, just a book is not a business, right? It's just a book. I had no idea about traffic generation, relationship building, customer relationship management, any of that stuff. So I then went on a massive journey, because we had sales and then nothing. And that nothingness basically lasted for about 2.5 years, or 2 years. So it took me about 6 months to get the book out, and then 2 years of figuring out, okay, how do I make sales again? And then I started interviewing people on video, very much like we're doing now. Yep. Back then, everyone was doing audio interviews, but I wanted to do video interviews. So I got my little camcorder, and the very first one that I did, I got lucky, because I got the idea at an event, and then I asked the leading guy of the industry if he was keen for an interview. I just ran up to him and said, hey, dude, do you want to get interviewed? And he said, yes, I've got a camera set up in my hotel room. Let's do this. And I said, sweet. So I got him on board. And then from then on, I went to event after event and just introduced myself to speakers, all the experts in the industry. And I said, do you want to be part of this interview series? And then did it. And so the idea was that two things that I would learn from these guys, how they became successful, how they managed to build successful online-based businesses. But then also I wanted to create those videos as like a membership site that I could, sell to the public. Yes. So what happened was I tried to bite off way too big a thing. It was like way too big a project. The technology back then was a nightmare. The camcorders back then was very, very basic. The files were so huge. An hour-long interview where I think it was maybe 4 or 5 gigabytes. It doesn't sound like a lot now, but in 2007, that was like bigger than your hard drive almost. So I ended up just killing my PC, and that's how I switched over to Mac, which was game-changing back then. But anyway, this whole thing was way too big for me. Never got it launched. I got all the videos done. I had the site ready, but then I couldn't launch it. It was just too big. Like I wanted to write a book from it. That was the promise that I made, and I couldn't, because it was just too much. But then one of the people that I interviewed, we became friends, and then we launched a product together soon after that, called Become a Blogger. And so this is, 2.5 years into my journey. Yes. Of earning very little money. And then all of a sudden we launched. We had about 20 or 30,000 people join our email database within 2 weeks. Within a month, we had our recurring income to about $23,000 per month for that business. So that was life-changing back then. This is 2008. Around about 2008, we launched that. And that was the first time that I used video as successfully as a product to sell online to the public, and to have a reasonably successful business as well. And that kind of put me on the map. And And then finally, then it clicked, what I really needed to have a business where you didn't just have a product, but where you also had an audience so that you could actually sell a product to that audience as well.
I see. And then, so yeah, you've done quite a few things in the digital product space, and it sounds like you spent a little bit of time playing with, courses, ebooks, but then you got into SaaS, which was what I find quite interesting, because I think a lot of people make this journey as an entrepreneur or founder, and they look, if you look at the online entrepreneurship space, a lot of people, they might start off selling digital products or courses, but a lot do move into software, which is something that you did. Why was that when you started VRoll? What was that reason?
So interesting enough, I didn't start with VRoll. Well, what happened was I built up a really good personal brand, around Gideon Shelwick, right? And teaching people about video marketing. That's where I ended up eventually, because I built all this experience with video, creating video products, but then also using video on YouTube to build audiences, right? So it's a really good combination. So I became kind of like an expert, and I started teaching people how to do that. But then in 2010, our first daughter was born, and that changed me, because then I realized, hey, hang on, what if something happens to me, and what's going to happen to this business, and what's going to happen to our income? Because at that point, my wife already stopped working. Because she didn't have to work anymore. We were making enough money. And so I thought, well, what's going to happen to the family now if something happens to me? Because this business is so dependent on me and my brain. And I'm like, well, I better change tact here. So I created a brand called Splasher. This is way back, the first version of Splasher at least. And the idea was that I would create a brand that and an asset base within that brand that could run and function independently of me. I could help create the value, but the value wasn't dependent on me and my brain. I could build a team, I could build a product, and all could run separately from me. That was the whole idea. Yeah. A year into Splashio, I met my first co-founder, my first, I guess, let's call it my first SaaS co-founder. Yes. And I wanted to do everything through Splasher, but then we discussed, let's set up this company in Singapore, let's create a new entity so it's nice and clean. So we created VRoll, and the whole idea with VRoll was to automate the video production of video ads for YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Yeah. So that's how we got into that.
Interesting. So that really took off. How did you find the need for that product? Because you guys became an industry leader in that space. How did you find out the need for that product? Because creating a SaaS product isn't easy. No. It's very, very difficult, and I find it, I'd love to know.
Well, I think it helped that I was already in the industry for such a long time. By that time, I was already in the industry for a good 9 or so years, maybe 10 years. So I already knew the pain points in the market. And the number one pain point for video marketing has always been the video production, the video editing side of things. Time and time again, I would run these surveys to my audience. I remember getting 1,200 responses once from people. This was in around about 2010. And I asked, what's the number one pain point you have for video marketing? And the number one, 80, 90% of people that would say, the video editing, the video production, it would always be the pain point. So when it came to video ads, that was the same sort of thing. But I thought, hey, this video editing thing's kind of been done now, but it hasn't been done in the video ad space. So I saw what happened in the organic video marketing space with the growth, and then I saw the video ad thing just starting off. And I thought, wow, if this could have the same trajectory as the organic video space, that'd be pretty cool to get in now. So we got on right at the beginning of the video ad space. YouTube ads were just sort of, they were around for a while already, but not many people were using it at all. And so I thought, hey, let's apply what I know about video content and video persuasion and video conversion, build that into software, and turn that into a business. And another reason we picked video ads in particular was because with video ads, especially direct response video ads, we want to get a direct response from that particular video ad as opposed to just building a relationship, was that you could have them nice and short. You could have them 30 seconds to 60 seconds. and which would mean that you could create a formula for them, and then basically create software to implement that formula. And that's exactly what we did with VRoll. We just used an age-old formula, AIDCA, attention, interest, desire, conviction, action. Right, that's an age-old marketing formula or persuasion formula.
Can you break that down, if that's okay, a little bit more?
Absolutely, yeah. So the AIDCA formula, or another version of it is also AIDA. They leave out the C, but we like putting the C in there because it's really powerful. It's for conviction. So the first one, A, attention, is where you want to grab people's attention.
The hook.
Yeah, the hook. And what was beautiful in the beginning days of YouTube ads was that the whole video was clickable. And you still only had 5 seconds before the skip button would come up. But we could create these ads where we could basically get people to click on the video itself and then visit the website. So that's what we did in the first 5 seconds was grab people's attention. And the best way that we did that was simply by finding out what is the biggest pain point for our target audience and then turning that into a question. So for example, if it's in the video marketing space, if the number one pain point is video production or video editing, you could start by saying, well, what we used to do, we'd start by saying something like, are you struggling with video editing? Or is video editing a pain in the neck for you as well? Or something like that. So, and that would just be a very simple question. All we had was text moving on the screen. That's as simple as it was. That's all the software basically that had fancy text moving on the screen. Would grab attention, but the thing that would really grab people was honing in on that pain point and turning it into a question. So that's all we did for attention. And that worked time and time again with heaps of different industries as well. The second letter is I, for interest or intrigue. So I like intrigue better because it, we all like mysteries, right? Or we all get drawn in by mysteries, and that's why these TV series, these programs, Breaking Bad, they work so well, right? Lost, Game of Thrones, they all use this. It takes advantage of what's known as the Zeigarnik Effect. There's other names for it too, but Zeigarnik was a Russian psychologist back in the 1800s. And she discovered that if you open up loops, or in her case, she would break up her teaching with her students, like some in the morning and then break it up. She wouldn't finish it until the afternoon. And she noticed that her students would pay better attention. And so that's exactly the sort of thing that people then started using in training, and then later on in video and in TV and all this sort of things. All of this is basically opening up a loop. And one of the best ways of doing that is to use a story with open loops where you draw people in. And that's the whole point of this intrigue stage. You draw people in to want to keep watching. The next letter is desire. So this is where you then, well, in our case, in the video ad space, what you talk about is basically the solution, and talking about how cool would it be to have this solution that could make your life better. And that's basically the desire stage of it. And so you can talk about benefits and features, that sort of thing. Then the C is for conviction, and this is really where you want to provide as much proof as you can that what you're talking about is for real, and there's many different things you can do there, like, use social proof, for example. You can use authority. There's like Robert Cialdini came up with those 6 triggers, and you got to be careful with them as well. You've got to always use them based on truth. That goes without saying. Some people don't, and it always hits them when it comes back at them. But anyway, that's what the C, conviction, is all about. And then A is for action, and it's very simple. You just ask people what you would like them to do. In our case, we could just tell them to click on the video back, like the very first few ads, you could do that. Now it's a bit more complicated. You got to tell people where exactly to click and that sort of thing. But that was basically the software, and we used that formula to then build the software to automate these text-based video ads that people create within 5 minutes.
Interesting. So one thing I'd love to talk to you about, which I think is interesting, is we see a lot of people going through a similar journey to what you went through, 5, 6, 7 years ago, where people are building a personal brand, but they're not building an asset. It's not so much a real business in a way, because it's reliant on them. And I think, when I think about Foundr, that's one thing I'm very proud of and passionate about, is we have an incredible team. If I was hit by a bus tomorrow, that the company would still run. Like, I don't have to do the interviews anymore. I'm not going to in the near future. The products and everything that we're creating and the way that we provide people with value and the content we produce, like, that is not reliant on me. Yes, I'm the leader. So I think that's a really good distinction that you made early on. And I think this is a trap that a lot of people do fall into. What do you think people should be thinking about if they do have a personal brand? Like, you look at Tony Robbins, this is also something that I've seen him talk about openly. He found this particular trap as well, and that's why in the past, I think 10, 15 years, he's got all these other companies. When we interviewed him, I think he's a CEO or founder or CEO, he's running like 10, 15, 20 different companies that turn over $1 billion in sales or something, or maybe in some insane amounts of money. So yeah, this is a trap that a lot of people often fall into. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your take on that.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, man, and I've gone in circles. I think ultimately the answer for me is it comes down to what kind of business is best suited for your personality. That's for me, that's really what it comes down to. And so, because each business has its own benefits, but each business has its own drawbacks too. Yep. So for example, a personal brand, what's great about that is it's relatively easy to start up. You've got low overheads. It's very easy to build a connection with your audience because they're building it with you as opposed to with a brand. Yep. So you can build an audience, I think, easier in a way, especially during the beginning days.
Yep, I agree.
But then the trouble with this, you can't sell it. Or what happens if something happens to you? Then what happens to the business? The business is kind of dead unless you've got a legacy type of thing set up.
Yeah.
So I think if you're building a personal brand-based business, I think it's important then that you look at other ways for building other assets too that can run independently of you. So like with Tony Robbins, he's got other companies, right? So I would think about using the personal brand to build the wealth or to build the income, rather, but then to use that income to invest in other wealth vehicles. So maybe real estate or stock or other businesses, but have something else there so that if something does happen to you, you've got like a backup. And the trouble with that is that only becomes possible once you become profitable enough to start investing in other things and to buy people's time to help manage those things for you. Because you get so busy running your own personally branded business, you don't have time to become an expert at real estate investment or stock investment or other businesses. So you kind of need to start hiring people to do those things for you, right? So that's the trade-off with the personal brand. So now the way I look at it now, what works well with my personality is, so I do like the personal brand sort of thing, but I also like the branded thing now because I've been through it because of the benefits you get from that, is to build the brand and build value through the brand and like create like an amazingly awesome product or service that really solves a problem for people, but have that all within the brand. So that's what we're doing with Splashio now, right? So we've built a video captioning service, and it really solves a very, very distinct problem very, very well. And we do it so well, our customers, they love us. They just love us to bits because every time they get exactly what they pay for and more. So building that value up, but then from that build a side personal brand alongside that, but it's based on the value that's already been built. So a good example for me is to look at someone, say like Elon Musk, where he didn't start off building a personal brand, right? He started off building these valuable things, these valuable companies that then eventually would get people to ask, hey, who's this Elon Musk guy? And then it would just organically start building. So I'm not aware of him specifically going out and thinking, hey, I want to build a personal brand here. No. I mean, maybe they did in their team discussions or something at some point, but it seems more like that was a thing that started happening organically. Same thing with Steve Jobs. It seems like it was Apple that was the valuable thing that was built. And then, that was his claim to fame in a way. And then from that there was a natural progression to a personal brand as well.
It's okay to have a leader.
Right. A leader within the business, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
That is clearly propping themselves up, but then you still have the business where the value creation is held with the business, right, not from the leader.
Yes. And that's the way I like doing it now. So I've seen both worlds now, and so now I'm combining both worlds in a way. So, but it's interesting enough now, previously the personal brand work would have been to create value as well, but now the personal brand is more used for building audience and building connection and relationship. And attention and redirecting that attention to wherever I want to. So and for the moment it's towards Splashio, but I might want to start up another business and then redirect it somewhere else, but then always redirect it to other value creation entities that are running independently of me.
That makes sense. So what happened? So you're not active in VRoll. What happened?
So yes, I exited VRoll start of this year, sold my shares to my co-founders. I think there were a few things that happened. Well, for starters, a SaaS business is no joke. It's funny enough, I've got a technical background. I studied electronic engineering, and there was a software component. So you'd think that I would get the software thing right, but I'm not. The thing is, I'm not a technical person. I never actually practiced as an engineer, but that did help me to, I think, at least understand how technical people's brains work. It's a different language you got to speak almost. But it's a real challenge because it's not just a market that you've got to build, and it's not just any kind of service that you've got to set up. You've got to solve a solution with a technical development, and that requires some real brain power and some investment. It costs money to get this brain power on board to do this work for you. And not only that, it's not like an information product where if you got something wrong, you just quickly change it, or whatever. Like when it comes to software, like any change creates sort of like flow-on effects onto the whole product. So it's just really complicated. And I remember when we were just starting out with VRoll, I shot a little message to Clay Collins, the co-founder of Lead Pages. And at that point, they were sitting at about 20,000 monthly subscribers. So they were just sort of taking off then. And I sent him a little Skype message saying, "Hey Clay, what's the secret here? We're just starting out with this SaaS. Do you have any tips?" And I remember him saying, "Gideon, there are a million things, and you got to get them all right." And I was quite deflated when I saw that because I thought he brushed me off or something. But then I realized he didn't brush me off because what he said was true. With a software or a SaaS company, there really are a million different details, and you got to get them all right. You think about it with coding, you leave out one little comma and the whole thing falls over. And that's just one of the million things you got to get right. So aside from getting the market right and the market product fit, all that sort of stuff, you got to get the product right as well. Internally, you got to get the user interface right, all the technical stuff. You got to get everything 100%. You don't have to get them all right at the same time, but that in and of itself is a challenge. Okay. The other challenge is just working with people, right? Up until that point, I've had some partnerships before, but never as intensely as that. And it was a pretty intense environment. We had some really aggressive goals to grow, and that's one of the lessons I learned. Like, I think sometimes it's possible to be too aggressive in your goals, and you can put too much stress on you and your team, and then you end up burning out. And nobody's any good when you're burnt out. And that was a really, really big lesson. So we're much more realistic with our goals, and we're much happier. And funny enough, we also seem to be more successful now too. Like the success seems to come easier now that we are not putting so much damn pressure on ourselves. And I think sometimes we do this because we get caught up in this startup world or this entrepreneur world, seeing all the successes, which is like a tiny fraction of all the startup companies, right? And we think that's the way it must be. And it's not the case at all. I think it's a much better way to go back into who you are as a person and really asking those tough, deep down questions of who you really are and what you really want, what's really important to you and what really suits you and your personality, as opposed to going, I want to be like that guy, or I want to be like that girl, or whatever. I want to have a company as successful as that, or I want to have a $10 million business, or I want to have a $100 million business. Why? Where did you get that idea from? Was it something that came from yourself, or was it something that you saw someone else did and now they've become famous and they're getting all the status and everything else, and you want that now too? So I think that's quite a dangerous, but it's a nice way for adding a lot of pressure into your life that could actually see you burning out. And again, like when you're burnt out, you're no use to anybody. And I think that's what happened with us at some point with V-Roll. I think all of us as co-founders got to a burnout point, and that was no fun. That was no fun. So you could get people who would normally get on really well with each other during very high pressure and burnout stages. It's tough. It's tough because you've got to make tough decisions. The market is demanding. Resources are demanding. Everything and everybody are demanding things off you, and then you get competitors coming in. So there's a lot of pressure with a startup like that, and so there's pressure with just the technical challenge. There was challenges with just the people side of things, like within our team, and dealing with setting such crazy targets and then struggling to meet them, and then feeling like disappointed and all that sort of stuff. And I think that all contributes to making it harder to succeed as well. I think there's a few things we could have done better for sure, but it's all learning. It's all learning going back in time.
I see. So you come to the conclusion that you wanted to work by yourself, or?
No, not necessarily. I do enjoy working by myself now. Like with my current company, I've got 100% ownership. I don't have any co-founders within the company, and I'm really enjoying it. I enjoy it because the control that I have. I don't see myself as a control freak necessarily, but it is nice to have control over the company in the sense that if there's a difficult decision to be made, that I can make it and I don't have to debate about it. Yeah. There's nothing worse in a company if you have to debate every single main question. And I think that is what is difficult for us in V-Roll. We had a 50-50 kind of a relationship where, it was with some of the really big decisions, it wasn't just one person that could decide. And that's just the way we set it up. We knew that going into it, but that did also make it much harder for us to make decisions. Because
how do others do it?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Well, I think if I would do it again, if I were to get partners on board again, I would probably, in my case, I can only speak for my case, right? Yeah. But in my case, I would probably not set up a 50-50 relationship again. I would set up something that's in favor of me so that the buck would stop at me. Or at least, even if the buck doesn't stop at me, at least have a setup where we know there's one person where the final buck stops.
And that's the CEO?
The CEO or the original founder or whoever it is that's assigned to make that final decision. And when they call the shot, they call the shot. It's like running a business is not a democracy. This is what I found. You can try to, but it really slows you down, and it just adds to the stress. If you've got to go through democratic process to make a decision for every single main decision, it really slows you down. And so now it's a lot easier for me to make decisions and move the company forward because I have a certain intuition about what I think is right.
Yes.
I could be wrong, but we find out within time. And I find it's much better to get a decision done and dusted and moving on than taking ages to try and decide. It's I'd rather have a wrong decision and find out really quickly than take 3 months to make a decision. So I think that's really important to even if it is a 50-50 relationship, maybe then to have a clear understanding or shareholder agreement between the people who make decisions that there's perhaps one person where the buck stops. And have that agreed between everyone before you go into, before you become profitable or before you even start the business up. Get that stuff out right at the front.
You need really clear leadership responsibilities for certain functions of the business more than anything, right?
Absolutely. And what's so challenging about that is that especially when you're starting out, if it's your first business, say, or even if it's, like that wasn't my first business and we still were learning, but it was my first SaaS. And it was the first time that we actually set up a shareholder agreement. And we didn't set that up until about a year into it, I think, which was too late. But that's easy to say in retrospect, because if I think back to when we were just starting out, I would have loved to have a shareholders agreement, but we probably wouldn't have known how to set it up properly anyway. So it's a tough thing to do. I would advise, if you can, to to get some proper advice from someone, maybe another startup founder who's gone through it, to get that advice on, what's the best way to set up something like that before you get into it, before you start making money, before you start turning a real big profit, and then going, oh, we don't have a shareholders agreement, and then it becomes really messy.
I see. So your focus really is heavily on Splashio now. That's what you're going all in on?
100%, yeah, absolutely.
And how's things going? What's exciting for you right now? We have to work towards wrapping up.
Yeah, I'm loving, like I said, having 100% control of the business. We've got a very clear vision now, and it's for the first time in my life where I've got a really, really good alignment with who I am as a person, and what my why is, my true why, which I've only recently really discovered, and the vision for the business and what we want to do for the business. And it's been really funny. The original, if I look at even the name and the original purpose that I didn't even know back then, is really well aligned with what we're doing with the business now. So it's been a very, very interesting progression of things.
Interesting. So you said you've got a really strong alignment. How do you think you found that, or what would you say to people? Because I think so often people start a business because they want to make money, which, I was in that position as well, but I fell in love. I was lucky that I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with the space. I fell in love with the work. Now it doesn't even feel like work. Yes, of course, money's important, but that's, for me, is a tool of growth, so we can build something bigger, and that's what really gets me going. Tell me about that. I'm curious. Like you said, you've been doing this for a while. Like, how do you find that alignment? What do you think people should be thinking about, instead of just the sole purpose of creating a business to make money?
Well, I think the penny dropped for me when I discovered that there is something like an unconscious drive that we all have, which I now call my past why. And it's something that becomes the reason why you do everything that you do, or why you've done everything that you've done. So I've only relatively recently figured that out. I asked myself the question, why have I done everything that I've done in the past? And when I started asking that question, the exact same answer kept on coming back. And it was one word. It was one word that would summarize it. And I was embarrassed when it came up to me, because I thought, really, is this it? Is this really so petty? And I'm not embarrassed by it anymore, because I realized that it was an unconscious drive and that we all have it. And when you discover it, that's when everything changes, because then you can change it from your past why, for why you've unconsciously been doing everything you've been doing, to changing it to your future why. And that changes, and it changes basically from serving self to serving others and contributing to others. In my case, the reason why I've always done everything I've done in the past, my past why, has been in search of significance. That's been, I think there's a number of different ones been for people, and for me it's been the search of significance and connection, but the main one has been significance. And you look at, like a lot of entrepreneurs have the search for significance, and that's the reason why we create. That's the reason why we want to create greatness. We create this amazing company. Why? Because we want to prove ourselves. We want to somehow show the world that we are worthwhile. We're worth something. So we create these things incessantly, because that drive, that need can never ever be fulfilled. It's almost like the search for money or the search for happiness. It can never ever be fulfilled. It's an endless hole. And when I discovered that, when I realized that that was an unconscious drive, and because it's an unconscious, selfish, egoic drive, because it's for the self. You don't even realize it. Like, you could be saying consciously that you're doing this for other people and for for the good of humanity, whatever. But unconsciously, there's still this drive that's serving the self. So when I realized that, that's like, wow, that's a wake-up call. And then it allowed me to change it from the drive and search for significance for the self to the drive or the desire now to contribute to others. So now it's still about significance, but now it's not about my significance anymore. Now it's about helping other people be significant, and other people feel good about themselves, and other people feel connected. So that's now changed, that's shifted, and that's exactly what we're doing in Splashio now. Like our whole, that's where the tagline came from. It's get seen, which is all about helping people get seen, like getting them seen, getting the world to see what value and what amazingness they've created. And so we've created, like Splashio does that for people and helps people get seen all around the world through the video captioning service that we've set up. And so there's like 100% alignment with that now and with who I am as a person.
Yeah, I love that. So look, we have to work towards wrapping up. A few more questions. You've been building businesses for a long time. You've been around the block. Any kind of final words of wisdom that you wanted to share? And then lastly, where's the best place people can find out more about yourself and your work?
Sure. I think as an entrepreneur, you've really got to get to know yourself. It's challenging, because there's so much conditioning that happens from when we were born. And I think each of us has a unique capability and gift or talent that we can give to the world. But it's so crowded and or conditioned away by society, education system, you name it, everything. And it's a real challenge to rediscover that again. And I think when you can rediscover that and find out your true why, your true purpose, then everything becomes a lot easier. Then you start getting things like Carl Jung talks about with synchronicities, or a lot of successful folk talk about this, where things just happen for them, or they just become lucky. Just the harder they work, the luckier they get. This sort of thing, right? Things just start happening for them, and I think that's when you start getting that alignment, when you start figuring yourself out, and then you start contributing to others. I think if you can figure that out, that can be life-changing. And I think it can make you a lot happier as well. Like when you start pursuing contribution to others, the side benefits are all these other things that you've been looking for anyway, like significance or status or money or relationships or whatever it is. It's when you start searching for those things in and of themselves that you never get them. You're just like, they're always out of reach. But when you have a desire to contribute, I think that changes everything, So that was a big thing, and I think it's not just an intellectual thing. There's two levels. You can get it intellectually, but you really got to get it at a much deeper level as well, like at the heart or a beingness level, whatever it is. I don't even know what to call it, but you just got to. The penny has to drop. I think that's where the change happens, and you know it, you feel it. It's like you know it, and when that happens, I think everything changes. So that'll be my message, just to keep searching, keep on digging. It's there, and you'll find it. If people want to find out more about what I'm doing, Splashio.com is the place to go to see what we're doing there to help people get seen at scale. And if people want to reach out on LinkedIn, they can reach me there as well, Gideon Shalwick, just on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a chat.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks so much for your time, man, making the time to speak with us. And it's been a pleasure, dude.
You're welcome, Nathan.
Awesome.
Cheers.
The Foundr mission is to help you create an ass-kicking business and help you learn straight from the mouths of world-class founders. Get your free printed edition of Foundr magazine featuring Sir Richard Branson. Just cover shipping and handling at foundr.com/Branson.